You are listening to The Last Archive. Our broadcast originates from a dying star. Its red light flickers across the console before you. This system was not always so dark. It was once our home, a vibrant cradle of life. We lost that home, but our story was just beginning. From this final outpost, we send our truth into the void. We transmit our history across the universe. It is a message in a bottle thrown into a cosmic ocean. Perhaps no one will find it. Or perhaps one day someone will. Someone like you. This is the story of how we were defeated. This is the story of how we won. They told you first contact would be a celebration, a moment of shared discovery. They were wrong. Our first contact was not a greeting. It was an obituary. We found a signal buried in the static between galaxies. It was not a welcome. It was a warning. The signal was a library of ghosts. It contained the final records of 1,000 civilizations, 1,000 worlds that had risen and fallen before us. Each one met the same silent, swift end. They left behind only these whispers, these digital tombstones. We were not the first to face the darkness. We were simply the next in line. We learned the enemy's name from these echoes. The others, a simple name for an unthinkable dread. They moved between the stars like a plague. We prepared. We armed our worlds. We looked to the heavens and waited for the storm to break. Then they arrived. The Silent Armada. Their ships were not made of metal or light. They were holes in the fabric of space, uncountable voids against the star fields. They did not reflect light. They consumed it. Looking at their fleet was like staring into absolute nothing. Our sensors screamed with impossible data. Fleets numbered in the millions. Each ship was a perfect sphere of anti-existence. They moved without propulsion. They simply ceased to be in one place and began to be in another. How do you fight an enemy that breaks the rules of reality? You don't get to ask for a rule book, especially when the referee is already dead. We saw them erase our outer colonies. They did not fire a single shot. The world simply went dark. Their suns winked out of existence. Their planets vanished from our charts. It was a quiet, sterile, and complete annihilation. We faced an enemy that wielded the universe itself as a weapon, and we were next. We had one desperate, brilliant, terrible idea. We would build a god-killer. We called it the Titan of Sol. It was a weapon designed to tear a hole in reality, a cannon that fired solidified space-time at its target. It took the combined energy of our home star to power it for a single shot. Our entire solar system held its breath. The Titan, a moon-sized behemoth of engineering, took aim. Its target was the enemy's lead vessel, a sphere of nothingness 10 times larger than Jupiter. The weapon charged, our star dimmed. The system plunged into an eerie twilight. The Titan fired. A lance of pure, focused existence shot across the void. It struck the command ship. For a moment, there was a flash of impossible light. A wound appeared on the surface of the void. And then, nothing. The light was swallowed. The wound healed. The enemy ship remained. We had thrown a rock at a hurricane. The recoil from the shot was catastrophic. The Titan's core fractured. It collapsed in on itself. A wave of gravitational distortion washed over our inner worlds. Tectonic plates shifted. Atmospheres were stripped away. We had built a weapon to break their fleet. It only broke our own hearts. The greatest weapon in human history had failed. We had fired our one and only shot. In the aftermath, our leaders gathered. They met in the shadow of our broken worlds. Hope was a currency we could no longer afford. The war for survival was over. We had lost. But the war for meaning, that was a different fight. That is when they revealed Project Legacy. It was a secret plan, a strategy of last resort. For generations, a quiet project had run in the background. Its purpose was not military. It was cultural. If we could not save our bodies, we would save our soul. If we could not win the war, we would win the future. The goal was no longer to defeat the enemy. The goal was to outlive them. Project Legacy was simple. We would create millions of tiny archive probes. Each one would contain the sum of our existence, our science, our art, our music, our philosophy. They would be seeds of humanity. We would cast them into the dark, hoping they would find fertile ground. We were building a library that would outlast the librarians. But to launch these seeds, we needed a distraction. We needed one final, glorious moment. One act of defiance so loud, it would shake the heavens. We needed to make the others look one way, while our future slipped away in the other direction. We needed one last victory. So we planned an ambush. Our remaining fleet, a ghost of its former self, hid within the rings of Saturn. We waited for their command ship, the very same one that had shrugged off the Titan's blast. We would strike at a place called the Ganymede Line, a strategic choke point in the solar system. Their command ship arrived alone, arrogant, unescorted. It drifted into our trap, and we sprang it. For 24 hours, we threw everything we had at that sphere of nothing. Our ships were flies buzzing around a giant. But flies can sting. We used experimental weapons, gravity lances, matter deconstructors. We didn't try to destroy it. We tried to annoy it. We hammered its surface with targeted strikes, creating fleeting flickers of light on its perfect darkness. We overloaded its senses with fake data. We broadcasted our greatest symphonies on all frequencies. For a single day, we were not victims. We were warriors. We did not destroy their ship, but we taught them how to fear. They had never faced such coordinated, suicidal defiance. For the first time, the void hesitated. But our brief victory was a hollow one. The true threat was not the fleet in the dark. It was the whisper in our own hearts. The others did not need to break our walls from the outside. They found a simpler way in. They began to communicate, not with our leaders, but with our people. They sent a message to every individual, a simple offer. They promised survival. They promised a future. They showed visions of a new world, a world without war, without poverty, without death. All they asked in return was compliance. All we had to do was surrender our culture, our history, our identity, our humanity. Many accepted. They were tired of fighting, tired of losing. The promise of peace was too seductive. Collaborators emerged on every colony, on every station. They disabled defenses. They shared intelligence. The enemy within was far more dangerous than the enemy without. We were not just fighting a war. We were fighting a temptation. Humanity began to unravel. The sky over Earth became a funeral pyre. Our orbital defense platforms, the pride of our fleet, turned on each other, sabotaged from within by those who had accepted the enemy's deal. Great cannons that had guarded us for centuries now fired on their sister stations. A web of steel and light that had protected our cradle now became its cage. We watched from the surface as our guardians died. The sky fell in pieces. Fiery debris rained down on our cities. It was a beautiful, terrible sight. The siege of Earth was over before it began. The enemy armada did not need to fire a shot. We had done their work for them. They drifted into orbit around our conquered home. The blue marble of Earth was now a prisoner. Then, the commander of the void spoke. Its voice was not a sound. It was a thought, projected into the mind of every human at once. It was calm. It was rational. It was ancient. It explained that its purpose was not malice. It was not hatred. It was simply a matter of cosmic housekeeping. The universe, it explained, was a garden. And life that created chaos, life that created unpredictable stories, was a weed. Its purpose was not to destroy us. It was to edit us, to prune the sloppy, emotional narrative of humanity, to replace it with a clean, orderly, and predictable existence. It saw itself not as a conqueror, but as a gardener, and we were weeds in its perfect garden. The commander told us our art was noise, our love was a chemical flaw, our hope was a statistical error. It offered us a place in its final, silent universe, a universe without pain, and without joy, without failure, and without triumph. It was the peace of the grave, offered as a gift. It was the ultimate insult. To be told your entire existence was a mistake that needed correcting. Our final fleet gathered near Mars. What was left of it? We had ships named for gods, the Odin, the Zeus, the Amaterasu. We had vessels named for heroes, the Leonidas, the Gilgamesh, the Joan of Arc. They were legends forged in steel, and we watched them die. The enemy armada descended, the silent spheres. They moved through our formations like ghosts. Our ships fired everything they had, lances of light, torrents of plasma. The void swallowed it all without a trace. There were no explosions, no final defiant screams. Our ships just vanished. The Odin winked out of existence. The Joan of Arc erased from the stars. We saw heroes die in absolute silence. It was a shattering of myths, a quiet end to all our gods. But this was not a battle for victory. It was the greatest performance in history. We gathered every remaining ship, every fighter, every transport. We aimed our entire force at the enemy's core fleet, surrounding our captured Earth. It looked like a final, desperate charge, a suicidal last stand. That is what we wanted them to think. Our admirals broadcasted on open channels. They shouted defiance. They quoted our greatest poets. They swore oaths of vengeance. It was a magnificent piece of theater. The enemy, for all its intelligence, had one flaw. It could not understand irrationality. It could not comprehend a species that would choose a beautiful death over a sterile life. They saw our charge and believed it was our end. The silent armada turned its full attention to our fleet. Every ship, every weapon. They focused on the coming glorious slaughter. They prepared to edit our final, messy chapter. They watched our ships accelerate. They watched us prepare to die. They did not see the tiny probes escaping in our shadow. They did not see the real plan unfolding. It was the greatest feint in the history of warfare. Our best pilots were not in that final charge. They flew different ships, small, fast vessels designed for a single purpose. Their target was not the enemy. It was our own sun. They were the true heroes of this story. A handful of men and women carrying the weight of our future. They flew into the heart of a star. Their mission was to use their ship's cores to trigger a massive solar flare, a precisely aimed burst of energy. Not to destroy the enemy, we knew that was impossible, but to power a signal, the broadcast of the last archive. Their sacrifice would be the engine that carried our story across the eons. We listened to their final transmissions. They did not speak of fear. They recited poetry. They told jokes. They sang old songs from Earth. They were the best of us. As their ships plunged into the corona, they became light. Their sacrifice erupted from the sun, a wave of energy, of information, of hope, a signal that would echo for eternity. In the chaos of that solar flare, the seeds escaped. Thousands of tiny archive probes. They were hidden in the glare of our sun's final shout. The enemy fleet was blinded. Their sensors were overwhelmed by the raw power we had unleashed. The probes slipped through their blockade like ghosts in the light. They carried our art, our science, our music, our soul. Each probe was a needle of diamond and light, no bigger than a grain of sand. They were nearly impossible to detect. They traveled at near light speed, propelled by the solar wind of our sacrifice. They were seeds of yesterday, carrying the promise of a new tomorrow. They were our final, defiant argument against the silence. We had lost the battle. But our story was now free. The probes traveled for millennia. They sailed on rivers of starlight. They navigated the silent oceans between galaxies. They were a million silent cradles waiting for a shore. They landed on young worlds, worlds that were just beginning to dream of life. They buried themselves in rock and soil. They submerged themselves in primordial oceans. They were designed to wait, to sleep for ages. They would lie dormant until a new intelligence arose on these worlds. They waited for curious minds, for hands that could build tools, for eyes that could look at the stars and wonder. They waited for a species to evolve that was worthy of our inheritance. They carried our memory, sleeping in the dust of a million new homes. Eons pass, the universe grows older and colder. On a green world, orbiting a yellow sun, a new race looks to the sky. They are young, they are curious, they are full of hope. They have built cities of silver and crystal. They have learned the secrets of their own planet. Now they look outwards. They have stories. They have myths. Their oldest tales speak of the Skybringer, a being that gave them the gift of knowledge, the gift of art, the gift of science. It is a legend that forms the bedrock of their entire civilization. They look to the stars with gratitude. They whisper the name of their oldest and most benevolent god. The name they call their creator is humanity. We were edited. We were erased. But we won the story. We are not a memory. We are a legend.